Good evening, CMST 430. My name is Brendon Favre, and this is my Module 8 discussion. I was assigned Chapter 13. For Chapter 13, I chose questions 3 and 4. So for question 3, what is the relationship between organizational justice and retaliatory behavior? Discuss them in detail and share a situation in your own professional experience where you've seen these concepts at work. So all three forms of organizational justice, distributive justice, procedural justice, and interactional justice, are based off of how much trust an employee has in management and the organization itself. This is discussed on page 406. The relationship between organizational justice and retaliatory behavior is that if an employee feels that they've been wronged or that their contributions to an organization are underappreciated, it could lead to retaliatory behavior. The book uses an example of an employee receiving what they felt was a poor performance appraisal. The book defines organizational retaliatory behavior as adverse reaction to perceived unfairness by disgruntled employees toward their employer. That's found on page 407. And on page 407, it also lists a bunch of examples, a few of them being speaking poorly about the company, disobeying a supervisor's instructions, and intentionally working slower, just to name a few of them. So in short, organizational justice or injustice can lead to retaliatory behavior. An example of this would be I was the overweight NCO in the military, and when I had to chapter soldiers for being overweight, we had some soldiers who they could still pass their PT test, actually did very well on their PT test, and they were really good soldiers. They were very proficient at their jobs, but for whatever reason, they were overweight according to the Army height and weight standards, and they couldn't conform to those standards, which was if you busted weight, then you got taped, and if you couldn't pass the tape, which would be taped around for males, it was the neck and the waist, and if you didn't fall into the chart based off of age and those measurements, then you would consider to fail tape and you'd be enrolled in the overweight program. When I'd have to inform them that they failed to make satisfactory progress, a lot of them just had small necks, and I was going to have to start the chapter progress. Many of them felt like they were wronged. They were hard workers in the military. They did what they were supposed to. They stayed out of trouble. They were good at their jobs. They passed their PT tests, and a lot of the time this would lead to retaliatory behavior. A few times they would lose their military bearing. They'd speak out in anger about the military, their chain of command. They were pretty pissed off. A lot of them would fail to follow instructions. They kind of just gave up. They didn't really see the point anymore, and a lot of them would try to do whatever they could to get out of work. They'd hide out in the barracks, take long lunches. They just didn't care anymore. So for question 4, identify what you believe to be the most important topic in Chapter 13, not already addressed in one of the above questions. Explain it as discussed in the text, and give a personal or professional example that brings it to life. One of the most important topics I felt that was not already discussed in Chapter 13 was the leader verbal aggressiveness and argumentiveness on page 381. This discussed the difference between how employees felt about employers who were verbally aggressive versus those who were argumentative. It was found that employees that felt their employers were highly verbally aggressive and low argumentative, they felt that their employer did not protect employee rights, and they weren't satisfied with their leadership. They weren't really satisfied with their careers or upward communication within the organization. Leaders who were more argumentative were viewed as more trustworthy and had more credibility with their employees. So an example of that would be, I had a senior leader that was not very proficient at basic artillery skills. He had done a lot of other things in his career, and he, for whatever reason, never really stayed up on the basic skills. And when he'd be corrected, a lot of the time, a young NCO or a soldier might correct him on something if he was wrong. He would get verbally aggressive with them and try to gain authority or respect by intimidation. He might make personal attacks about them, about their appearance or how long they've been in the service, or just take low blow shots at them. Try to demean them in some way. and nobody trusted him. And he was considered to be a very two-faced individual. You always had to walk on eggshells when he was around, and you had to watch what you said around him, because you never knew if he was going to try to use that at a later date against you. He was kind of what was referred to a lot in the military now as a toxic leader. So for chapter 14, I chose question 2. What are the key similarities and differences between public relations and advertising marketing? Use and cite the language of the text to explain your response. If you've had PR advertising experience, share some of your experience framed within the context of the chapter. So the main difference between public relations and advertising and marketing is how it's communicated and what the objective of it is. So with public relations, it's generally communicated through uncontrolled media, and it's more about creating a brand and a positive public image. By uncontrolled media, that's like a word of mouth type of stuff. And to create a positive public image of the company or organization, whereas advertising and marketing is done through controlled media, which is advertising, magazine, commercials. It's how you're advertising a product with the goal of promoting a product or service to a target audience and influencing the behaviors of the target audience. All of that is discussed on page 417. The similarities are that public relations and marketing and advertising are about creating the positive images about the company and the products they sell. They also tend to cater to both their desired target audiences. So a company that's going to sell men's clothing is going to obviously, their PR is going to be more towards men. They're going to want to create ads towards men. Carl's Jr. actually would be a better example. They've got the image of the girl eating the hamburger on the car. They're trying to advertise towards men, mainly men who eat fast food, which might be younger. So they try to target that audience. That's how the company brands itself, in my opinion, and that's also how they market their products. So that would be the example of that. That's all I got for tonight. Have a good one. Thanks.